I won't get too far into this. There are lots of other thermophiles as well. Thermodesulfobacter is a nice one. Thermomicrobium, probably a member of the chlorobi, Chloroflexus gynecoccus. There are lots and lots of thermophilic organisms, and the most thermophilic of them are these deep branches, or apparently deep branches. There are some other thermophilic organisms. There are thermophilic species of Bacillus and Clostridium. None of them are organisms that grow in these kind of temperatures, except for a few species of Bacillus and a couple of Clostridium. Let's talk, though, about the thermophilic ancestry. This isn't very long section. So if I go back to this original tree, let me do that. It turns out that there are two kinds of thermophilic bacteria. So here's a phylogenetic tree of bacteria. And you find thermophiles in two kinds of places in this tree. One of them are as relatives of otherwise moderately growing organisms. Things like Bacillus sulfatericus, Thermobacillus, Clostridium thuringiensis, Bacillus thuringiensis, etc. And so there are thermophilic firmicutes. There are a few thermophilic actinobacteria. There are some proteobacteria that live at moderate temperatures. But these organisms are all closely related to mesophilic organisms. And clearly, these organisms all have a mesophilic ancestry. There are some thermophilic cyanos as well. And they're related to mesophiles. And so it's absolutely clear that these organisms have a mesophilic ancestry and have adapted, in the case of specific species or genera, to life at high temperatures. The other kind are the ones down here, organisms that are members of groups that are predominantly thermophilic, and because these organisms are thermophiles, and these are thermophiles, and the archaea down here, the deep branches there are thermophiles, there's every reason to think that these ancestors were also thermophilic. And so these are primitive thermophiles. They're organisms that have a thermophilic ancestry. It's absolutely important that you keep clear when you're thinking about thermophiles what kind of a thermophile you're looking at, because one group adapted to life at high temperatures. And if you're interested in adaptation to life at high temperatures, you ought to be looking at Bacillus thuringiensis. But these other organisms, as far as we can tell, have always been thermophiles, as far back in evolutionary history as we can measure. Thermophily in these organisms is a lot more subtle. They haven't adapted to life at high temperatures. They've always been that way. And it's these other organisms that somewhere, maybe in this part of the tree, the bacteria adapted to life at moderate temperatures and were very successful in the process. Conceptually, that makes a lot of sense. If you look at the phylogenetic trees and what temperatures they grow at, it makes perfect sense to predict that these things were all thermophiles back here. Can we measure that? Can we test it experimentally? Turns out we can. If you look at the RNAs or enzymes in these different kinds of organisms and how they're related to each other phylogenetically, it's possible using parsimony analysis to reconstruct ancestral sequences. And when you do that, and you make those RNAs or make those proteins, if you make this one, those enzymes or those RNAs function best at moderate temperatures. But if you make this one, they're thermophilic. And so that's an experimental test that provides some evidence for the fact that these organisms, at least the enzymes from those organisms, were probably thermophilic, and therefore the organisms themselves were probably thermophilic. I think that's a cool trick, going back and recreating ancestral sequences, a little bit like molecular Jurassic Park, right? Let me save that.